When you agree, going into retirement amongst all this hecticness that's going on out in the world, that at least when you go into retirement, it feels a lot better when you do it, but you do it with peace. Now, I know with everything going on, it's super hard to do that. You know, a lot of this stuff is out of your control. But the thing that is in control is if you find the peace around your retirement situation, it makes for a much easier retirement. The other day, I was flying out of DC. I was flying out of Dulles Airport, and I was rushing. My flight left. The boarding time was at 6:10. I think it was about 4:45, and I had to check a bag. And so when I get to the United counter, United had just did a remodel in that counter, and so they had removed the Premier line. Like, I have a little status with United, but the line was around the corner, and so it's 4:45. I'm stressing. I'm trying to board this plane. I'm trying to get to Denver, and the line is around the corner. So I'm panicking. I'm like, what do I need to do? I was already stressed because the Dallas traffic was crazy. And so what I did, I got out of line. I went to ask a simple question. I said, there has to be another line, right? There has to be another line for for people with a little bit of status at United. And the lady was like, yeah, sure, it's right around the corner, right? I couldn't see it, but there was another line right around the corner. And around the corner, there was literally no one in line. Now, mind you, on the other side of the wall, it had to be no less than 60 people in that line. It was wrapped around the other side of the wall, but nobody could see the other side because nobody asked a question. So I got out of line, asked the question, literally walked straight to the counter, went straight to the gate, and got on the plane almost, right? Went through security, obviously, got on the plane. And this is what I'm seeing a lot of today when it comes to people getting ready to retire with the DRP and the RIFs and the VERAs and the furloughs and things like this. The thing that we aim to do at Fed Legacy is just point you in the right direction, but you have to ask the right questions. And showing up to the webinar today shows that you know how to ask the right questions. And so what I want to do today, amongst all this is going on, is help guide you in the right direction so that all this panic energy that's going on in the world, all this, am I late to planning my retirement, all that energy that exists right now doesn't impact you in a way, right? Our goal is to give you that peace of mind. So what we're going to talk about today as I share these slides, hold on. We're going to talk about today is growth, protection, and income in any market. There's a term that exists in the financial world that's called the sequence of return. It's a formula very similar to compounded interest. I'm sure many of you all if you've ever heard of compound interest, just put one in the chat just to let me know that y'all participating and I got some action, some interaction today. If you've heard of compound interest, put one in the chat. The thing that's very similar to compound interest, but it works in the opposite, is what you call sequence of returns, right? Sequence of return is one of those things too that you can't control, just like you can't control compound interest. All you could do is do your part. Your part when it comes to compound interest is you keep putting money in there, and it stacks and it stacks and it stacks. And before you know it, you got $500,000 one day. The next, 6 months later in a good market, you got 600,000. You're like, how did that happen? It's because of compound interest, and that 600,000 grows to 700,000 in short order. It's the effect of compound interest. So the opposite when it comes to retirement that you got to pay attention to is what's called sequence of return. And so the things that impact sequence of return and your three biggest challenges when it comes to it is market, taxes, and inflation, as we talk about all the time here. So what sequence of return is it depends on when you start withdrawing money, what present market conditions are there, and how that impacts you, right? That's just something you cannot control at all, is how the market's going to return. So here's an example. You have two retirees, both retire with 500,000 in their TSP, both have the same income needs of, hey, I want to take $20,000 out of my TSP every year. Both have 500,000. Both leave their money in the C fund and they start withdrawing because, again, the C fund has been doing good. You leave your money there. Now you start drawing out income. But you do that, and there's two completely different returns. The thing that makes or breaks your retirement when it comes to drawing down income when you leave it in the market is what the first 3 years bear. So this is an example of somebody that retired in the year 2000. If you remember 2000 is the year where we had the 3 straight negative years in the S&P 500 because of the dot-com bubble, right? Something people could never predicted. It's just something that happened. If you look at the market now, the market's good, but the way things are going, you just can't tell what can happen to recover from everything that's going on today. If you saw the job reports, they just realized the jobs have been negative the last 2 months. I know a lot of people that are unemployed right now, not just in the federal sector, but in the private sector as well. What happens, we don't know, right? And so in the year 2000, the first 3 years of that decade were all negative years. So this person started taking 500,000 in that time period. At the end of that 10-year time period, because also 2008 was in there too, where the market dipped. At the end of that $500,000 they started with, taking $20,000 out a year, which is a normal income withdrawal. That 500,000 at the end of that 10-year period is at $224,000 with the sequence of return of the S&P 500. Now, let's say the person did the same thing. We ran the same scenario in our retirement analyzer. A person started this in 2010. Market was great. We were recovering from the 2008 downturn. This person retired. They said, I'm going to take my 500,000 and I'm going to take $20,000 a year out the same way. At the end of that 20-year period, because it was a great run, 1.3 million in their TSP. Now, they're still taking 20,000 a year. Their account more than doubled. Now, which one of these people would you rather be? Most people will say the Browns. The reality is you don't want to be either one of them because both of them walked in with the plan as blind that had no control over how the market went. They just went in blind and it was like rolling the dice, right? And so what we teach at Fed Legacy, what I want to help you understand today is you want to go into retirement with a plan that you avoid this type of risk. Because God forbid you're in a medical emergency or some other type of emergency, you need your money, and all of a sudden, as soon as you're ready to withdraw some of your money, the market drops 20% like it did earlier this year, or in 2022, where the market turned and all of a sudden you need the money, right? Nothing wrong with that, but you don't want to be drawn on that money from the money that you're needing income from. And so from the people we talk to on a day-to-day, the panic that most people feel is because, okay, if I'm withdrawing income or I have something going on, I don't ever want to run out of money. And so understanding the sequence of returns and then building a retirement plan in defense of that is how you get that peace of mind. And so one of the things that people always come and we're talking about in our session, they're like, Mr. Smith, well, I want growth. And I'm like, yeah, you should have growth, right? And if you've been on these conversations with us, we always talk about the sequence of returns. I mean, not sequence of return. We talk about the financial house, where we make sure you have that protection bucket, you have the walls, which is your taxes and your inflation bucket, and you also have your growth bucket. Your growth bucket is what we're talking about here. Your growth bucket needs to be, if it's not in the TSP, is in some, you have some managed money or anything like that. You want to make sure they're investing in these 3 type of funds, because all the TSP is index funds, right? And so you have your C fund, which is the S&P index fund. Great. The returns, as you see here, this year so far, 14.8. Then over the last 10 years is at 15%. All great, right? But that's we've had a great 10-year run. Who knows what the next 10 years looks like? We got the S fund. This year's at 11%. But if we look here, the last 10 years is at 11%. Again, that's great. But again, that's a 10-year run. If you go back to the sequence of returns, we don't know what the next 10 will look like, right? And typically when you have those double-digit returns over a 10-year period, history would say it's time for a reset, right? You're not just going to ride it out forever, right? But then you have the I fund, which has been booming this year, which is at 25%. But the thing about the I fund is over the last 10 years, even though it's at 25% now, the last 10 years has only returned 8%. That's a big gap because this year is included in that 10-year average. And so what that tells you is that account has been low for a lot of years in order to be at 25 this year and only an 8% return over the last 10. Again, that volatility, it's all good when you're working. When you're not working and you're withdrawing, because when you're working, it's different because you're getting paid, you're putting money on top of it. You're not the money doesn't really mean much to you. You're in your early 50s, 40s, it's just numbers on a screen to you. Yeah, it might fluctuate, but the emotional tie to the money isn't the same. When you retire, there's nothing else going in this account. This is everything. And so those dips mean a lot more to you when you retire. And so when you're if you're like some people, not everybody takes income, but some people do. And the people that do, if you're taking income and these things are fluctuating like this, it becomes a bigger thing, right? So this is where sequence of return can really impact you because again, and just to explain it a little bit deeper, how someone can be. Let me go back to that slide. How you can have one at 200,000 and one at 1.3 million. The way that happens is because when the market dips, you're selling those shares. A share that was worth $100 is now being sold because you're needing the income every month for $30 or $40 and things like, and you're selling a bunch of those shares at one time. That causes your balance to decrease faster, right? So compound interest works really well for you going up. Sequence of return can hurt you really bad on the way going down, right? And so you just want to make sure when you're taking money income, you have that money sitting in a protected bucket that doesn't fluctuate with the market. Super important thing because what it allows you to do is allows you to have the money that you do want to grow sitting in a growth fund. Within the TSP, if you choose to do it within the TSP, you have three options to draw income from. If you're the person that says, all right, I want to draw income, even though the TSP doesn't let you splice it out, but if you want a percentage of your money in a protected situation, you have the G fund, you have your F fund, which is bonds, you have your L life cycle funds, especially the L income fund. But the L income fund is made up of mostly G fund. The problem with these three accounts is that they just don't beat inflation, and so you run into problems there because you're taking income out. And oftentimes, when we witness people taking income, they oftentimes need more income over time because of inflation. If you have your money in the G fund, the money's just not growing enough. And so if y'all remember a couple of sessions ago, I showed y'all a lady who we had put into an IRA, and she had put 500,000 in her IRA, and it was like around 2023. It was May 2023. She started drawing income on it last year in June. She's been taking 3,000 a month out. She took 3,000 a month out for the rest of 2024. At February 2025, she started taking $3,500 a month. Again, that inflation bump. But even still, she put 500,000 there. She's been taking $3,000 a month for the last year and a half, and plus 3,500. And her account is at 618 now, even though she put 500,000 in a protected account, right? That's the way you want to be drawing income out, where you beat inflation. You're taking income, you're not decreasing your principal balance. You want to make sure you have strategies set up like that so that when you do retire, you're not thinking about coming back to work. The question we get all the time, we ask on our first intake call, we say, what is your biggest fear in retirement? And we're trained to really go deep with a person. We don't just accept, well, Ms. Smith, I'm thinking about running out of money, and then we just move on. We say, tell me a little bit more about that. And oftentimes people are like, and then they start talking for like 5 minutes about what they mean, because it really unpacks a lot of things. It's like, I don't want to be like my parents because my parents ran out of money and it was really hard and this, that, and the other. And I watched them borrow from everybody, or they had to come live with me, or my husband lost his job a couple of years ago. It's just all these stories come out, right? And so the thing you want to do is make sure whatever your story is, put it out there. Let somebody hear it, an advisor, someone, us, whatever. Tell somebody your biggest fear when it comes to retirement, because a lot of times when you get it out, because you're going to be feeling it, you're going to be thinking about it. Once you get it out and you allow somebody with some level of expertise to really dissect it, put your numbers on the screen, and just really, really help you understand, like, all right, this is the fear. Let's isolate it. Let's look at it. Let's look at the different ways this could come into fruition, and then protect you from that fear. Retirement becomes a lot easier. I cannot tell you how many times we've had clients who came in with a whole bunch of fear around retirement, and and then now they're calling me like, yeah, Mr. Smith, I'm in Europe. Because one thing we like to do is we like to talk about where you're going. Like we send you a special gift, and it's all about like just different places around the world. And I can't tell you how many times I get those phone calls where people are talking about how they're just relaxed in retirement because that big fear they had was removed. And so with all the chaos that's going on right now, and it is chaos, the thing that you have is like you have what you saved all this time. Let's create a plan. Like that's the best thing you do is create a plan, get clarity, not get caught up in the headlines because they're coming at you every day, figuring out what your next steps are and executing on that. And then let everything else, all the chips fall where they may, but just making sure you have a plan so you're not getting caught off guard. So when it comes to income, you just want to have systematic withdrawals. Can't stress that enough. Reason why systematic withdrawals are really important is because you don't want to, if you take too much income, it could put you in different tax brackets, which affects you with IRMA. It also affects you with your Social Security taxes. So you want to make sure you're taking systematic withdrawals, not just saying, all right, I'm going to do 6,000. I'm going to do 7,000 for my team. You want to make sure it's systematic. One, because of those taxes, but also because you want to make sure that whatever you're taking out, you're still not decreasing your principal. And just making sure you look at that, right? When you make those withdrawals, and it ties to your income. And then when you come to your TSP, you can do the TSP annuity. They show it on your statement. It's not the best plan, but it's an option. The problem with the TSP annuity is you have to pay extra for what they call the cash back option, which will allow you not allow you, but allow your family to continue to receiving your money after you pass on. If you don't select that, then TSP keeps the rest, which is crazy, but that still exists. And then you could do IRA rollovers if you don't need any income. And the IRA rollovers, well, you could use that if you need income too, but the IRA rollovers allow you to do certain type of tax planning and things like that. Things you can't all the way do with TSP because the TSP has some limitations on how many withdrawals you can make a year and things like that. So with that being said, we got about 10 minutes. The thing that I've been talking to a lot of people about lately is like, what is your legacy story going to be? Are you going to be a builder? A builder is the person who comes to your family with ideas, and ready to execute on it. I tell the story of all the time. I have a client who him and his daughter built a network of preschools in DC. They're out of 100 employees now, and they're really doing well. He retired in his mid-50s, and they're doing well. And he had average money. He didn't have a whole lot of money, but he had a daughter with a plan, and he knew how to execute. Just being a government employee for so many years, he had a lot of systems in place. Him working in the Department of Education, and him and his daughter built something special. Are you the person who, your kids are in college, your grandkids in college, whatever, and you're a person who always has vision? You want to expose your family to the world, right? And you want to just because exposure is everything, and that's something that us in our culture have to do more of, making sure we expose people to what's out there in the world so they can dream bigger, right? That could be your role as you go into retirement. Like that's your legacy story. And the last piece is just the mentor. The mentor is a person who just gives advice, not only to themselves, to their family, but their friends. You're the person in the office that people came to. You're the warm person. You're the person that people felt comfortable expressing themselves to. Because right now, a lot of people are afraid. And so stepping into these three roles, going into retirement, can make a big difference, not only for yourself and giving you energy, giving you purpose for what you do next, but also to your family, and it also gives you something to do. And then just invite you to think about where you want to be. Because just because you're retiring doesn't mean your story's over. It could just be beginning. And that's something that I talk about on a daily basis with people as they're telling me how the DRP is impacting them and all these really, it's just tough for a lot of people. But let's talk about what's next, because there's huge opportunities out there for all of us. If we all work together, if we all step into whatever our next story is, because here's reality. We all need each other. We all shouldn't be in silos. Call me, tell me your story. Like our team, that's something we love to do. We talk about it every Monday on our Monday call about the stories that we learn from people.